The fallout continues. I don't know exactly when it's ever going to end because it's unprecedented. So, of course, comments and questions are always welcome concerning Florida State's plight, missing the college football playoff. And I shouldn't even call it missing the playoff, getting dissed, getting snubbed from the playoff, from the invitational.
There you
Welcome to
go.
Florida State Seminoles Live right here at the Voice of College Football every Wednesday night, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. We've got NFL draft decisions. We've got the transfer portal. We've got National Signing Day in 2 to 3 weeks. All of that to get to. Georgitis here, the Renegade Report. Get there, folks. We will leave the link in the chat to make it so easy on you just to click on over, check out what George has available. George, what's going on tonight?
Man, you named it. Just trying to get over this thing, get over missing out on the invitational. We're having a lot of fun over at the Renegade Report, and it's that simple right here on YouTube, just at the Renegade Report. So go check out what me and Jen are doing over there. But just trying to get over the whole loss, trying to see if there's any chance this team is going to play and against Georgia in the Orange Bowl, or what they're going to do if they're going to opt out. We had a press conference get canceled today at the last second, so I'm sure we'll talk about that before the day's over with. You mentioned it with the portal. Man, I could do two of these shows straight talking about the portal. There's going to be a lot of attrition through the draft, through guys aging out. We had a lot of redshirt seniors, and then a lot of guys entering the portal, like you mentioned. So there's already 7 names, I believe, in there already, and a couple others that are thinking about it. So all kind of stuff going on in Knoll Nation. Plenty of stuff to talk about.
George, you mentioned trying to process this. I'm going to take a guess on this one. I got to think that in a way, it's getting easier. You're getting more and more used to it. But I got to think there's probably several times a day where it just kind of hits you like, really? Did that really happen? Seriously?
Yeah, there's you're left with no words. And I go back to the conversation we had here. And like, we had a bunch of fun. We had everybody in here, me, you, Chris, James. We were all talking about it. Which conference is the best? Is it the SEC? Is it the ACC? Is it the Big Ten? Where does bias come in? Where does that enter the committee room? Where does that enter the AP poll draft? How does it affect recruiting, et cetera? And my thing was like, look, if you want to argue the SEC is the best, they have the most championships, that's fine. But when you look at it, the ACC is competitive on a level of the second or the third, in like every category. If you want to go back 10 years, we got 3 titles. You want to look at the draft thing, maybe Big Ten's been a little ahead the couple of years, but if you go from like 2010 to 2020, it was the ACC that was second in draft picks. So there's all these things. They are by no means the bottom of the barrel, right? At all. But that's the that's the narrative that's happened due to marketing. And even though Pac-12 is going away and the Big 12, as we know it, is going away, still, it's like you feel like the only team that it could have happened to was the ACC champ. And that's what you got, the ACC champ, undefeated, 13-0. And you got nobody out there stumping for you, Mark. You didn't have Jim Knowles, I believe is his name, Jim Phillips, excuse me. You didn't have Jim Phillips, stepping in the middle of the broadcast and talking about how great the defense is being played in this ACC championship game, and listing off the things Louisville done and how they beat Notre Dame and stuff. You didn't have that. You had basically a 3.5-hour advertisement for the SEC. And so it's just, there's so many different things, and you come to find out that they're not even using the different things they're supposed to look at. You find out that while they're watching the ACC championship, the committee members were saying to each other, I just can't see FSU winning the championship. Can't see them making it all the way through and winning the national championship. So that's why we're not going to put them in. And it's not even one of the criteria for it. So there's just, like I said, so much to process, and you just feel bad for the kids. You feel bad for Jordan Travis. It's tough. And then for Mike Norvell, you go back to that little clip they showed of him after, which was, I thought, just sick for them to have that banked and knowing what was going to happen, and seeing that reaction and deciding they needed to play that on TV. I'm glad he decided not to talk at that time, but you just see the emotion on Mike Norvell's face and his head go down there, because he's put this message out there. He's asked a lot of these kids, a lot of the program, a lot of the staff, and they do everything pretty much. There's nothing they could have done. And even if they want to float back to, well, it's because of the quarterback, Well, that's only one of the criteria. That's just one tiny one. They treat it like it's 90%. And this narrative started of this exact situation before he even went down. There's a clip out there, and it's before the UNA game, and Herb Street, Reese, Pat McAfee, and all of them agree that, yeah, Florida State shouldn't be in. You got to put Bama and Texas in. So, and then they got it. And they made a liar out of me. They made a liar out of, I kind of dismissed it wholly that if we went undefeated, we would be left out. Like, it's kind of, there should have been a discussion between, whether it's Bama or Texas, but they basically said ACC is not a Power Five. Like, it's barely a group of five, because even a Cincinnati team undefeated got in. Now, of course, you had 10-3s. You had different, you didn't have all these 3 undefeated Power Five teams, but it's just like, why is it that Michigan, Washington are automatic ends? What made them so great that they're automatic ends? We passed for more passing yards with our third string quarterback than JJ did in his game. We held Louisville to their worst performance all year in just about every category on offense. Brahms' worst offensive performance in years, like with different programs. So just disappointing, Mark.
We got James here. James, what's
what's going on?
Good to see you.
Man, just happy to be here, guy. I'm getting prepared for the state championship. This is not the M of the losers with orange and green. This is the winners who actually have an opportunity to play games in the playoffs to be considered. Not teams that are 7-5 that don't have any. The Mandarin Mustangs. We will hopefully beat a team from Miami for the state championship. Should be a good game. I can't wait. My first ever football state championship game that I've ever coached.
That's cool.
Or played in.
That's awesome. Yeah, that is high-end stuff right there. That is awesome that you and others coached the kids and got them to that point, and they worked hard, obviously, to get to that point. James, before I pitch it to you, I wanted to make one comment off of what George had to say, because Chris alluded to this when we had a conversation the other day. So, folks, we did about 70 minutes with George and James and Chris the other day, and we're releasing those segments. 2 out of the 4 are out there. So the next 2 are coming soon, starting tomorrow morning. But the ACC, I'm trying to remember the terminology that Chris was using to basically just say that the ACC has an inferiority complex, basically. And here is where I went nuts on the ACC. This has now been 3 years ago in 2020. And this, in my estimation, shows you the type of self-respect a league has for itself or does not. First of all, they, of course, signed an agreement with Notre Dame. So they gave Notre Dame a place to play 14, I believe, varsity sports, except for football. You can just abuse us. You can just play against our teams because we want to make the money that we get from playing Notre Dame. And we'll give you a place for the rest of your conference affiliations, your teams to play. Okay, so that happened several years ago, 2015 roughly. And then 2020 hit, and there was a mad scramble because of COVID, and Notre Dame was out in the cold. They had nobody to play. And the ACC came to their rescue to say, we'll save your football season. You can play in the ACC. And I'm on record. I got videos out there that can be easily found to say, ACC, what are you doing? Do you have no self-respect? You are throwing a life preserver to a school that's already abusing you, and now you've got them right where you want them. You tell them you're signing a 20-year contract to play in our conference if you want to play football this season. And I almost rooted for Notre Dame. It's not Notre Dame's fault. They're doing what they're being able to get away with. So my thought was, you know what? I'm rooting for Notre Dame to win the ACC championship game, which would be the ultimate slap in the face of the conference to say, we allowed you in, you abuse us every year by just contracting to play football with us and use us for the rest of the sports. We're going to let you in for 1 year because you were out to dry. and you actually won our conference, and then you're just going to leave. You just jumped in for 1 year. We won your conference. Bye. So I was actually rooting for Notre Dame to win the ACC. Of course, they got to the championship game. So here we are 3 years later, and we're seeing again where the ACC doesn't seem to have put up much of a fight. And I understand they're not making the selection, but still, it doesn't have a good look in regards to the conference's self-respect.
Yeah,
Nope.
I mean, bigger than that, the conference did not make the selection, but just think about the people who are in that situation put in charge. The chairman of the college football committee is the president of North Carolina State University. You've got Jim Grove, who was a longtime Wake Forest coach. You've got I got some people mad at FAMU because of a joke that I made. Oh God, I can't think of his. Oh, you got Joe Taylor, who's former Florida A&M football coach, so he's got ties to Tallahassee. You got so many people there that have ties to Tallahassee or have connections to the ACC, and what they did was they allowed themselves to be manipulated. And the joke would be, if anybody's watched 300, you see the movie where the guy sold the Spartans out so that he can get his money and have easier passage when the Persians took over. But I've been fairly consistent with my message, and my message is different. And I think the message comes in. I have my teammate Brian McFadden on Monday, who was with CBS. And what I've found is that a lot of former players and guys who coached, people who have money that isn't necessarily tied up into them doing this gig, are speaking extremely freely and consistent about how this is not what we teach, nor is this what we were taught as players. And it just doesn't add up to the fact, like even Dan Mullen came out and said that this is just straight wrong. And we showed it on my show today, the look that Dan Mullen gave the guy for even fixing his lips to say what he said was like, I can't believe you're saying this. Like, Dan Mullen, a former Florida coach, was offended. Gus Malzahn, who competed against Florida State in a national championship, was offended. A lot of coaches, a lot of players were offended. But when when I go back and I sit back and I think it is what it is. It's happened now. But Mark, I started my show off, and which is actually, before I even get into this, the funniest part of all of this is the hypocritical nature in which fans of sports are. During COVID, we talked about Notre Dame, but during COVID, we had some wild things happen in America. And the one thing that people said consistently is, hey, man, I watch sports to get away from the BS of life. Don't politicize my sports. Don't politicize my sports. I don't want politics in sports, which I always retort. Tell me a time when sports wasn't political. I would love to know. We have breast cancer awareness. It's not all cancers matters. We know how to separate and do things, and this is not where I'm going with that. Where I'm going with this is, Ron DeSantis, please do something, Governor. I'm going to give you $1 million of taxpayer money to go and sue the NCAA. We want our penance, right? And rightfully so. When a wrong is done in America, somebody has to be done wrong, and it has to be publicized. There has to be protest that has penalty. And then laws have to be made. Oh, my goodness. I could be talking about the civil rights movement. I could be talking about George. It's crazy. When we don't, like how we want politics to jump in and save us, but we don't want our sports in politics. But we know it's right. And as I told Florida State fans, you see how that feeling that we have in our gut? It feels like we've been saying, not saying you, Mark, but like Mark, we've been saying, oh my goodness, ESPN has an agenda against us. Why would ESPN have an agenda against you? You're one of the biggest, you're a huge part of the American football system. Why would we have an agenda against you? Well, everybody hates us. Well, why would people hate you? You're Florida State. You do just win and you're in. You do everything the right way. the way that everybody told you to win, to do it. You won every game. And then you came up short by somebody who wasn't as good as you. I hate to tell you, Florida State fans, but you call a group of people fucking crazy when they tell you this stuff if you take football out of it. But ESPN literally told you this, and guess what everybody's doing right now? They're explaining it away from you while you've seen it being played in your face. But now you can see it through sports. But when somebody else tells you this is happening to them, they're the crazy one. So I want you to know what you're feeling right now is what you do to other people. And I'm going to tell you, as one of those other people, the only thing you can do, you can't sit there and cry about it. You can make change. You can demand change. You can do this, but you still got to win. You got to brush yourself off. And you got to make sure that this doesn't happen to somebody else, because if it can happen to you, it can happen to anybody else, but you still have to win, because what's going to happen is the minute you go out there, and it's so funny because it's sports, you learn in sports management. Sports is the microcosm of society. The minute that you lose, they're not going to remember any of the other 13 when you actually had a case. They're going to say, see, we told you. We told you weren't prepared. We told you weren't going to win. I'm just telling you what's going to happen. But you got to, in all of that, you got to smile. You got to show face. And you can't do some of this stuff that some of y'all are suggesting. It's asinine. Ask 10, ask 11, to quote idiot Stephen A. Smith. You play the bowl game. You have guys that will hold out because that's their choice. I get it. The seniors came to win a championship that was snatched from them, but there's so many things that come from a bowl game. If you believe that a championship is the only metric to end the season positive, it's crazy. Like, it's not doing anything is going to be throwing a temper tantrum. You go out, you win, and you show everybody that they're done. And the crazy part is the crazy part is this. I don't want politics in my sports at all. Like, I don't want, what is wrong? Like, the crazy part is it's not going to handle anything. They're not going to come back and give us the national championship. There is a way to get a national championship, though. You have to win and you're in, just like normal. But if Alabama beats, like, if one of the one-loss teams, Alabama or Texas, wins the national championship, the coaches poll and the AP poll do not have to recognize them as the national champion. You handle your part, and then you see how everything else goes. And at the end of the day, it sucks. But sometimes bad things in life happen to good people. It's part of being in America. Grow up, wake up, and suck it up. And the bowl is that I see what Corey put. You guys got to stop that. You've never played in a bowl game before. What do you know? What do you know? Have you ever been wined and dined in a 5-star hotel because of what you did during the season? No. Have you ever been paraded around the city? Because it's called a championship. It's called the Orange Bowl Championship for a reason. Like, have you ever had somebody give you $2,500? This is the most money that some of these kids would have ever seen. The difference between a lot of these other people, y'all can miss me with that. You're talking to a guy who's played in the Orange Bowl twice. That's the nicest hotel I had ever seen in my life. It was the most money I had ever got put in my pocket in my life. It is Miami. We ain't talking about Boise, Idaho. It's about recruiting. It's another opportunity to see you. It's meaningless to somebody who has never done anything in their life. It's meaningless to you, but you were not good enough to step on the field. So what does meaningless mean to you? All I'm saying is it's a dope ass trip. It was my Christmas gift, Mark. One of the craziest things is, Mark, I don't know if we've ever talked about how cool bowl games are. Like, Christmas growing up the way I grew up, that sucked. And not in a bad way. It's just in comparison to what my kids have. Didn't get Nintendos, didn't get Sega Genesis, didn't get all of this other stuff. I remember the first bowl gift I got when we went to the Sugar Bowl. I got it was a 5-disc CD changer. Now, this makes me feel real old. This was cool. And it had the red, white, and yellow thing so I could plug it in and I could have surround sound in my dorm room. I was so happy that I didn't have to unload one CD when I was tired of listening to something and put another one in. In fact, I could put 5 CDs in there at one time and I could push mix. And it will go through different CDs for me. But you're getting up to X amount of dollars in gifts. You're getting cash. You're getting all of these different things that are given to you. On top of the fact you get another opportunity to represent your university. You get a bowl ring. You get all these different things. And no, it is not the national championship. But you know what happens every year? Now it's only 4 teams get to compete for that. You know what we didn't do last year? We didn't get a chance to even get this good of a bowl game last year.
Mm.
You know what we didn't get the year before? A bowl game. You know what we didn't get the year before that? A bowl game. You know what we didn't get the year before that? We got to go to Shreveport, Louisiana, if I remember correctly. No, we went to the Tony the Tiger Bowl. Like, shut up. This bowl is meaningless. We haven't got it. Again, be upset about it. I get it. We're upset. But like, it's an honor. And there's still things out there to play for. But sports is a microcosm of society and it teaches life lessons. The life lesson in all of this is sometimes people that have more that things are above your pay grade and they suck and they happen. What you gonna do? Sit down, cry, and whine about it, and say, "Woe is me." That ain't gonna change the situation. And I can promise you this: as a guy who sits on a bowl committee, you know what happens if Florida State doesn't go to the bowl game? They pick somebody else to go to the bowl game. So and all you're doing is, and on top of that, you mess up your opportunity to participate in the revenue share of this crappy conference that we're in. So you want to compound the situation with an idea that doesn't even make sense. And if you try to show up on the field and take a knee, you are again. There's this thing called libel. Like, you guys just say that it's a temper tantrum. You don't even bring good ideas that can actually happen, that would actually make sense besides what you can think with your, again, it's not your fault. It's just what you know as a fan, and you're upset. But how long are we going to cry about it? Ain't nothing changing, man. Not this year. And if you go out there and you get beat, I mean, I'm sorry. Again, I can only speak for a guy who's played at an elite level, whether you want to talk about my stats or not. I made it there. More than 90% of the people on this chat. But you don't get to that level by being afraid to lose a game. The only people who speak like that are people who are afraid to play. That's why you're the fan. Nobody goes around, oh, well, we're going to just get pummeled. Like, that's what they say when you go to I've never thought that in my life. I've never walked to a game and been like, oh, even when we played Georgia in 2002. I never thought
James, while you're right here on this, I'm sure you probably saw they kind of at the last minute canceled the bowl game. I'm right there with you 100%. This is an amazing opportunity for these kids. But like, my thing is, if for whatever reason, the only way I would be for the bowl game like not happening is if it was some kind of thing that the whole entire team decided in solidarity that they weren't going to do it. But I agree with you. 2 years ago, they weren't in a bowl. Get them in.
That's not in Mike Norvell. Mike Norvell would not allow that. Like, that's just like, and again, what are we protesting for? Because it's an invitational. It's a college football invitation because we didn't get invited to the party. There's ways to handle that. And I think that's where Mike Alford and all the other people. And though I kind of speak and joke and jest a little bit, if we're going to go do the legal standpoint for Florida State, not necessarily like to find out the reasons why and the rationale, there's ways to do that. But here's the real part. Even if they did the 12-team playoff, have you seen the top 15 teams in the nation right now and where they reside?
Oh, yeah.
It's the Big Ten and the SEC. The same excuse could be made next year. Like, the only way that this changes isn't through it's getting out of the ACC and out of the GOR that we're in, and that's the thing. But like, or you can go and you can actually beat an SEC team that is the two-time defending national champion, and say that there's only one team in the nation that went 3-0 against the SEC. You know, like I said, man, I just don't understand like the thought. Like, do people see? My problem is this: is when I see people suggest things like this, that I know they wouldn't even suggest to themselves in their regular everyday life.
No,
Like,
hell no.
Like, if your job just when you get skipped over for a promotion, did you just storm out and say, "Oh, I'm not going to go to work today. I'm going to show them"? No, you wouldn't even do that. You can admit that you got a raw deal and that it stinks, but there's ways to handle it. Maybe you go get another job at a competitor, but you don't just quit the job you got right now. That's irresponsible. Like, again, my problem, Mark, is when I've been doing this long enough, and I ask people, do you use this logic in your everyday life? Would you give this advice to your own kids? Like, not for skip sports. Oh my God, you didn't get you should have won student council president. You didn't get the student council president. You should boycott school. Like, do you do that and that? Like, I mean, is that how you operate? Are you successful operating like that? I don't know. I've never seen it work before, but I do know there's a way to make stuff happen. And my mama taught me be so good they can't deny it. Unfortunately, we were good and they denied us. Do it again next year. That's all we can do. Or leave the NCAA, which that ain't happening. And the only thing we can do is try to leave this punk conference that we're in, the ACC. That's who we should be mad at. Yep. Not necessarily college football invitational. Be mad at the ACC. Not mad at the kids who are going to play in the bowl game, who should be supported, who should be, like that's all this stuff is taking it out. And like, I'm just, I don't understand it. I can't figure it out. I mean, I try to rationalize people's actual thought processes, and it scares me. If that's how people really think, I am like nervous if some of y'all are in charge of people. Like, it's not a winner's mentality. And I think it's a lot of it has to do with you're afraid that the people that rivals have something to say, that now they say, oh, 13-0 and not in the playoffs. Like, you're entertaining people who could never be in this game. Like, they don't know what it feels like to be in this position because they'll never be in this position.
We'll take it back to what you were saying earlier. I mean, Kirk Herbstreit and these guys get on there for a month and they gaslight you. And they tell you, the average fan out there, Florida State shouldn't be in without a quarterback and all this stuff. So when it happens, yeah, like you said, they just take up and they start repeating everything that Paul Feinbaum and Kirk Herbstreit and all these guys said. And the few people that were saying the opposite, what are they going to do? Keep fighting that battle? No. You see it. These guys, Dan Orlovsky, Greg McElroy, they flip to the company line. It is what it is. We're not going to make a big stink about it. But like you said, all you can do is go out and do it again next year. But get the heck out of the ACC. I don't care if you got to go independent for 1 year before you make it in 2025, hopefully to the Big Ten like we think. But yeah, the ACC, the way Jim, whatever his name is, the way they handled it, I mean, they left you hanging out to dry. They should have been those people at to bat, and they weren't. And just like how we accepted this BS this year, so it goes back to the same thing, the same crappy business strategy as 2012 when they signed this terrible grant rights thing that put us in this situation over a barrel against ESPN anyway. So you're gonna have to go somewhere with a smart businessman, because it's not the ACC. It's about keeping that little money train coming there in North Carolina and keeping the status quo. That's all it is. It's nothing about Florida State. Like Mark was talking about, they'd rather promote Notre Dame than Florida State. So that's just
they're happy
what
with
it
the
is.
Basketball. They're happy having the lock on basketball that we have, and we've given the SEC the football thing. And then even with the Notre Dame thing, I think Mark spoke about it incredibly intelligently. You literally had Notre Dame by the gonads.
Yeah.
And you gave them entry. But again, nothing. What's ironic is that that Boo Corrigan father is the one who led FSU to be in the ACC, and brought the ACC into the situation, and he's probably the one that's going to have destroyed it. Because I mean, again, what really should have happened, and this is one of the quotes that people make: wars are started by old men but fought by young men. And a lot of times it's the old people that can really stop a lot of this stuff. If Boo was really about the ACC and really about what's fair, I should have been reading about his first statement. These guys came in here and made this decision that was asinine. It was dumb. I'm submitting my resignation immediately because this is not what college football is about. This became an invitational. It's not about finding the best teams because football is played on the field. It's about finding the best four that look the prettiest. And then that's when you start seeing the real trickle down and the ripple effects. Because why would this guy say this? What happened on the inside that there will be demands of it? Instead, what we saw a group of men and a lady that were molded by what people said. And it was a setup. And it was set. And then I think one person even numerous people have talked about it. Even the rationale doesn't make sense because Florida State, they asked themselves, would Florida State be able to compete for a national championship in the current state without their starting quarterback? Even though there's numerous instances of teams going in the college football playoff and winning in spite of, but we would never know. Now, here's the crazy part. If Florida State wasn't good enough to beat those four teams because of their starting quarterback, but they're good enough to play Georgia, who has their entire team intact, that won 29 straight games in a row and lost one game by, I believe, 3 points. Like, the rationale, the thought process should have bumped Florida State down to 7 or 8 if it was real. But we kind of know that's a little bit of BS. And the reason why you blame the ACC is because, again, we're not hearing the stuff should not be coming from Ron DeSantis. It should be coming from the ACC. And the ACC should be banging the drum. And what Paul Feinbaum said is true, which could be. If you're mad that Florida State was vocal about not wanting to be in the ACC, all you did was prove that Florida State was right, and you cut off your nose to spite your face. Because what would have happened, what the SEC realizes is that the more teams we have in the college football playoff New Year's 6 category, that's more money coming to the conference. Florida State had an opportunity to have Florida State in the CFP and Louisville still go represent in Miami at the Orange Bowl. That puts you 2 teams in the higher bracket bowls. That's more money to everybody in the conference. But you didn't fight. You didn't fight at all, man. And that's just unfortunate. I mean, again, that's why you got to take the steps to be able to remove yourself of this. I don't necessarily know if independence the way, because now you really made everybody mad, and now you got to go find 11 teams to play that will be of caliber to be able to to still have you in the conversation. Notre Dame's not going to play you every year. And I only say 11 because state law dictates that we have to play the University of Florida. And just even people with not understanding how civics work, just like, why can't, like, Ron can just sign something and we can't play Florida? I'm like, it's actually a law and it doesn't work like that. You have to actually, and then who wants to see that happen? Get politics out of sports, man. Like, there's no need for that right now, but it stinks because it stinks for the seniors. But again, there's, just like J-Trav, injury should not have been the excuse to punish the other players, like, from getting the opportunity to play. Again, this is an opportunity for, let's say, if the seniors opt out, let's say that's 15, there's still about 60 to 70 guys that are going to be there that live to play football, that want to be able to show what they can do. And that's why it's still important to support those guys who are going to be Noles, who are still Noles, who want to represent it on the football field. And so, for people who don't understand why I say you got to support the guys who are playing, like, they're like, that's what you I don't know if you support them by attending the game, by watching them, by cheering, by doing all these different things. You know, people tend to like that. I don't know if people realize I mean, I haven't had this issue before, but like playing in front of an empty stadium, from what I understand, is like not a cool feeling. So like that's what other people do.
Yeah, you can ask Tyler Van Dyke about that one.
Mike, I know the players. I bet you money that the players want to play. Like,
Yeah,
again, this is the whole thing we have. Like, if you want to meet the players, that's why I have a whole channel like involved. Like, talk to the players. Like I'm not giving insight. I'm giving insight as a former player, as a guy who covers it, and a guy who actually, like, I talked to Rob Deloach, I called Kalen Deloach's nephew. Like, I actually talked to a lot of these guys. And the seniors are upset, and they have the right to do that. Be upset. They came back for a reason. But I mean, the guys who are juniors and sophomores, they got everything to keep playing for. Like, nobody wants to watch you beat up on. I hate to say, Duke this year was actually pretty good, but like next year, nobody wants to see your film on Duke. But again, the NFL scouts will watch Georgia they'll watch Georgia, Florida State, even if it's the 40 walk-ons on each team playing, because they know that that's good brand of football there. So, you know, it's again, I mean, I don't know what again, I don't know how everybody else chooses to live their life, but you don't get to that level of ball by ducking folks.
One point that you made, James, about the AP vote after all the dust settles and all the games are played. So, yeah, there's an opportunity there, especially if Michigan and Washington do not win the national championship. They lose. Florida State wins. There's an opportunity there that I believe would be great to see people organize. And under normal circumstances, you just let them vote their conscience, and you allow them just to vote for whomever they believe is if you've got a stack of one-loss teams, or three in particular, let's say, or whomever comes out of the Invitational as the champion, and then you let them vote their evaluation of the teams under normal circumstances, and they can compare Michigan versus Florida State, or Washington against Florida State, or whatever. Alabama or Texas is who it would be, obviously, because if the other two win, they're undefeated. But still, even in that case, if there are still two undefeated teams, meaning one from the Invitational and one being Florida State, they can still right or wrong in a sense if they organize. And that's what I think would be a tremendous effort for those individuals to make, to say, under normal circumstances, you should be allowed to vote whatever you think, whatever team you believe is the best one-loss team when all the dust settles. But this is a unique situation. Therefore, even if you think Texas is the best team in the country after they beat Washington and Alabama, or whatever the case might be, we have this unique situation over here. So we need to vote for Florida State, and we need to reward them with a AP national championship.
It'd be the first time you ever had
I would recognize that. Like, that would be what I like. Now, I ain't finna go around like UCF and be like, we're the Florida Times Union suggests we're the national champions or something like that. But I mean, I guess, Mark, my problem, and this is what's really ruined college football, and this is why the NFL is I'm starting to believe, as a guy who covers it, is a better product. One, in the NFL, you'll never have this situation. We saw it with San Francisco last year. San Francisco had lost two quarterbacks, actually. We're in the NFC Championship game, and nobody says, you know what? You guys lost your two starting quarterbacks. You can't play. We just watched Monday Night Football, where the third-string quarterback for the Cincinnati Bengals went out there and actually lit up Jacksonville, for going 32 for 37. Even though the backup quarterback for the Jags actually almost drove down and won them something. But So I mean, that's one thing. But like, what's really ruined it, and people talk about NIL and they talk about transfer portal, but like, just look at what fans are saying about the bowl game is meaningless. Like, they used to, like, the bowl season, like, everybody doesn't play for a national championship. It used to actually, but the fan base now, not just Florida State fan base, every fan base, even guys who have never won championships. We're not in a bowl, we're not in a national championship, so what does this mean? It used to actually mean something to have postseason play, but now I guess it doesn't mean anything. I could never think like that because I've been somebody, but I guess that's what the mass public believes, that the bowl season is meaningless unless it's outside of 4 teams, and that's a wild. Like, the NFL making the playoffs is very important in the NFL. Like, you want to win the Super Bowl, but you do really want to at least get to the playoffs. You want to win games. It's just a very, like I said, it's an interesting way to think about things.
Well, a lot of that has been brought on by the networks steering people in that direction, and all the hype and the focus being on the playoff. I don't like it myself, but I'm older than most of the people in the chat and that watch these things. There were a few people in the chat earlier. I'm not going to highlight their comments. I'm not going to try to get to them, but they, for some reason, were challenging me of sorts to make my opinion known, to see if I was legit. Folks, I'm not going to do that here. So I don't expect you to see all of my content by any stretch, folks, but I am been very transparent, very blunt about where I stand. So you can we've got a 4-part series with these two and with Chris Frazier. You can go through all that. And I want you guys to hear from them first and foremost, because they're the guys that count. But you see a link that I posted in the comments section of the first 2 videos that we posted here with James, George, and Chris that has my take. I went on for 20 minutes, so you can see it there. If you have any problems with it, certainly leave your comments. Well, George, we were going to hit this transfer portal.
Yeah, man.
A few minutes here.
Yeah, this is one thing that you can kind of get back to normal, and something that I've been adamant about. The
It's
past
kind of
couple.
strange, George, to say that any talk about the transfer portal is normal, getting back to normal. But,
right. That's kind of where I was going there. It's like you get some kind of normalcy, getting back to talking about the transfer portal, and that you're talking about football instead of this whole thing with the playoff. But it's brand new. It's something Mike Norvell is way ahead of the game on. And what I was about to say that I've been adamant about the past couple of months. A lot of people seem to think that since Florida State has the number 3 high school recruiting class in the nation, since they have so much better of a high floor this year, that you only get 5 or 7 guys out of the portal. You don't have so many guys leave. Well, I've got the list of guys who have hit the portal thus far, and we're already up into 7 or 8 names. I think you end up having, again, 10 to 20 guys go out the back door, and you end up with at least 10 plus guys coming in. Now, when I list off these names, there's something you'll notice, as opposed to previous years. You had names of guys who it was just like, it was just time for them to move on. It was a real deal where it just weren't Florida State or ACC level players. Now we're to a point where it's just guys who have been passed up on the depth chart, or for whatever reason have seen writing on the wall, but these are some quality guys. The first day immediately, reserve quarterback A.J. Duffy hit the portal. We kind of all expected that one. C.J. Campbell was actually a preferred walk-on, but he was, for all intents and purposes, a scholarship running back. Tight end Marcuston Douglas, a guy who is a big piece for this team. You really enjoyed watching him. But just a lot of young talent coming in. You're bringing in Landon Thomas, who at one time was the number 1 tight end in the nation. Morlock coming back, etc. Dylan Brown Turner, a linebacker recruit out of the high school ranks last year, who we all kind of expected to be here. Well, I don't speak for everyone. I expected to be here. Just tough sledding for a guy who kind of tacked on there at the end. Tight end Preston Daniel, a guy who I believe was a walk-on at the beginning, has really become a good player. He's gone. The next three are ones that have really surprised people and the ones that have caused the stir on the timeline that I was alluding to before. And just people, if you're an FSU fan and you're watching this, just kind of calm down, because understand that these next three names, the quality of them and the fact they're hitting to the portal just speaks to the quality and the floor of this roster and how high it's risen, because these guys are in the same exact position that these previous guys were a year before. It's just that's how high the floor's risen, and that's how much better guys are coming in through the high school and the 10 to 12 portal guys they bring in. Quayshawn Sapp, a guy who was a dark horse to start at center this year. Even with Maury Smith being injured, he couldn't get on the field. So he hits the transfer portal. You hate to see it. He's a really great guy. I believe he's like a redshirt sophomore. You think he's going to be good in the future, but just bigger talent coming in. The same thing with Bless Harris. He's a guy who transferred in. He's already been here for 2 years. He's going to go somewhere for his final year. And the one who's really got everybody upset is Patrick Payton. He's actually went back and deleted the tweet where he talked about possibly entering the portal. So that's one that's kind of up for discussion. I'm curious to know what James thinks about Patrick Payton, if he's going to actually stick. But yeah, there's 8 names right there off the bat, and I think you've got another 5, at least 5 to 7 coming.
I mean, I don't know if, again, Florida State, again, to me, a lot of this reaction comes from not wanting to be trolled by other people. And Ohio State is having a match. Ohio State actually had the number 1 wide receiver in the nation hit the portal from last class. There's more shocking players leaving Ohio State. Georgia's having players leave. Clemson's having players leave. Texas A&M is having dang near everybody leave. Florida's having some of their better players leaving. Moral of the story is I'm not going to be shooken up by guys who are leaving that could be replaced. As Mike Norvell has a background and history of replacing these guys with quality guys, especially if I'm a defensive lineman. Look at the last 2 defensive ends who have hit from the transfer portal. You've got Jermaine Johnson, who was a first-round pick to the New York Jets. Jared Verse, by all intents, is considered a top 15 pick. You got Brandon Fisk, who's played himself into the top 100 at wide receiver, as well as what's my guy? Johnny Wilson has played himself at the top. That's what I was saying about his wide receiver. Johnny Wilson has played himself to there. Keon Coleman. You have a list of Mike Norvell being able to say, hey, here's what we've done for portal guys. But I also know that the portal is still new. And to use, again, another thing that I love as a capitalist, I love the opportunity of young men getting to participate in a capitalistic society for the first time in their lives. And one of the things in capitalism you learn is the market dictates the terms. And what's different than last year, and what we'll find each year until we have this for about 4 or 5 years, is that you'll learn that with last year's portal, you could ask for a little bit bigger money because there weren't 5 quality defensive ends. But this time, there's about 20 to 25 quality D ends that have hit this portal that could be 1 to 2 year stops. So it sounds good. I'm going to throw a temper tantrum until you realize maybe the numbers that you were hearing and that you thought you could command aren't as high because the free agent pool is a lot higher. And that's why I always tell fans, just relax, let it play out. Things will happen. I like what Ingram Smith posted. We do not do negotiations through social media. And I think that's the difference, is that we believe our fan base, it's not about throwing temper tantrums. It's about having a solid play in place to be able to effectively move forward. And that's what they were doing. And I think our players might have learned that you can only go to that well so many times. And then I always say this, is covering the NFL, in particular covering the combine for a week, you learn that no NFL team really wants to deal with somebody who's constantly seeming like they're trying to renegotiate their deal because they outperform their play. There's a time to hold out. Holdouts are always the last resort. But there's a time to test the market, and then there's a time to go out to shut up, and that's somebody's actually to shut up and go play ball. And unless you are a can't-miss prospect, you're kind of sacrificing the bigger picture, because the NFL money is still way better than the NIL money. Like if you can command some of the numbers that some of these guys were saying, why go to college? Like, go to the NFL. Go get the money. Like, and nobody will blame you. Like, go get. Like, getting drafted will automatically make you more money. But at the end of the day, guys know that.
We have just a couple minutes here, but we got a super chat coming in from Michael. Michael, thank you so much for the contribution. Who is saying here, so what do you have to say, James, about a redshirt junior, Greedy Vance, comments about the team not playing in the bowl game?
Yeah, I talked to Greedy. People make tweets, just like people make comments that they don't really know about, and then it's out of emotion. I also know a guy who wants to play another game with his brothers because he's a redshirt junior, and because he's coming back next year, and because these guys actually have something for each other. But people were upset, and rightfully so. But it's a hold on, I'm gonna read this for you. The thing is, again, it was out of emotion, and what you're talking again 3 days ago. I'm actually on Greedy Vance's Twitter account right now. He hasn't tweeted anything like that since the initial sting. So, like, one thing you won't do is outlogic me. Not only did I go to Florida State University, I graduated in 3 years. Like, so the thing, like, so you're talking to somebody who's been through it. You're talking to somebody who's around it. You're talking to somebody who actually sits on a bowl committee. I'm talking to you. I'm actually giving you I'm entertaining your voice, which you can't get anywhere else. But only on social media can you argue with somebody who is clearly in a different vantage point than you are on this, and think that you're arguing with playing with the same deck of cards. Like, it's just like, again, I can pick up this phone and call damn near any player that you want to talk to. If you really want that, that's why we have all in memberships on Den Media Group. You would know those things. You just join Den Media Group. You can see these players' interviews. You can come hang out with them. I'll even give you a sideline pass, and you can ask Greedy yourself, because all in members do get the access to these things. But that would be my suggestion to you, that sometimes people speak out of passion. But I also saw a guy who put up a paragraph about why his brothers deserve to play for a national championship, and he's 100% right about that. But at the end of the day, I know Mike Norvell, and I can wholeheartedly promise you this, that on December 30th at 4 p.m. at Hard Rock Stadium, there will be a football game played. And you can choose, which is your right, but I'm pretty sure, Mark, we've been doing this once a week for how many years now?
We're at about 5 now.
Yeah. Good and bad. There will be a show that Wednesday after that game. And you know what? There's going to be a lot of people in the comment section that probably said that they're going to protest, that are going to be able to argue what happened in the game, because we've seen it all the time. But again, going to the NFL, players take a knee. I'm not watching it because they disrespect the fact, but they tell you play by play. People saying the NFL doesn't like black players. I'm going to protest because they don't like this, but it can tell you play by play everything that happened in every NFL game. You're going to watch. We're going to support them because that's what we do, but it's still raw and we're still emotional about it. And the one thing that you got to do eventually as an adult is you have to recognize where you're at on the stages of grief. And some of us aren't over it. And I'm not here to tell you like when you got to get over it, but eventually you got to get over it. It's not going to change right now. There is a way and there is a plan that's in place. And I trust Mike Alford, I can't remember our new president's name. I trust those guys to be able to do the things that are necessary in order to make sure that not just this doesn't happen to Florida State, that this travesty does not happen to another Power 5 conference team or Power 3 or Power 4, whatever is left when it's all said and done. But one thing I will say though is 13-0 has only happened 4 times in Seminole history. is incredibly difficult to win a game in football, let alone 19 in a row, I believe at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, these guys are incredible. Us an incredible group of young men that I enjoyed watching, and then some of these seniors I'm truly, truly going to miss. I know some of them will opt out because they have injuries and they have some things that they want to do to be able to go to the next level, and I can respect that. But for the guys who are coming back, I cannot wait to see the next iteration of Seminole football and what Mike Norvell is going to bring to the table. It should be another exciting year. I don't know if it'll be 13-0. It's too early for me to tell, but again, it should be another 10+ win season moving in next year. So a lot of things for FSU fans to be excited about, regardless. And I respect that. I respect the answer. I'm just hot. I respect that. I 100% get it.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate that. George at the Renegade Report, get on over there. And of course, James at Den Media Group. Two excellent destinations for Florida State football talk. And we've got a run, and we will see you back here next week, folks.
Go Noles.
Go Noles.